I'm going to talk about elbows and knees, and this is going to be a very different format than what I'm used to. I'm going to go completely traditional, trad wife, and we're going to be basically going over this book. I'm going to be looking at elbows and knees. The purpose of this is to show you the way that I study, the way that I learn from things, and then hopefully you can use this way if you like this way. So we're going to be looking at this book. You can look at it. He's an artist. He has a book. He did a book with another artist, but you can look at 1010. You can search up 1010 ArtStation, 1010 Twitter, and he'll show up. And he has this way of drawing that I like. It's very Bridgman-esque, and it's also very structural while developing good shapes. So let's first look at the elbows. I have these bookmarked on different elbows and stuff. We have elbows here. The main thing about elbows, it goes from softer forms to harder forms to structured forms. So let's look at it like this. Muscles, I don't even know how well you can see it, but muscles can be more rounder in shape, rounder shapes, while bones are more structured shapes, right? That's the general rule. We have muscles and then we have bones. That's how we want to simplify, and that's how we want to design them. So if we look over here at the elbow, we see that there is more softer shapes around the bone, around the muscles. And then once it gets to the bone, once it gets to the elbow, which is bone, it's very structural. And it goes into the anatomy of the elbow. So if we see over here, what the elbow is that the humerus bone starts from the shoulder, and then it kind of goes into like a hammer shape. And then the way that it works is that there's this little notch right here. The ulna, which is your elbow, your ulna bone bites onto it like that. You can think of it like a cylinder, and then there's a claw grabbing onto it like this. That's kind of what the ulna is doing. And that allows for the arm to be going up and to be going down. So that's the anatomy idea about it. And then all over it, right, all on both sides, here's the other bone, right? So this is upper arm, and this is lower arm. This would just be all muscle wrapping around, and then muscles wrapping around here. This is the underlying bone structure, and you need to know, for elbows, you need to know the surrounding anatomy. Let's put a pin in that, and let's go into the next page here. So to start off, the main thing that you want to start doing is to have spheres for the joints, and then whatever primitive form that you have for the limbs or areas that are not the joints. So this would be the shoulder joint, and this would be the elbow joint, and then you'll have another cylinder. You can have another sphere for the wrist, and then you can have a box for the hand. So this would be the very simple baby step. This is step 1 or step 0. This is how you would draw out the form like that. So once you have that down and you want to start adding in more features, you want to start doing something like this, which is structure meets anatomy. So what are the muscles around here? So the way that I would study this, right, if you were to say I'm studying this on my own, I would study it like this. Have this picture right here, and you just copy it. But I'm not copying it like, ooh, I gotta do something like this, and then like this, and then, ew. No, don't copy it like this. Copy it like how you would if you were to build it from scratch, if you weren't copying it. So we already know that this is the beginning step. So we start off with a cylinder, and then we have a ball, and then we have a second cylinder, getting the gesture. Boom, we have the gesture of the hand right here. Now let's start adding in the different pieces. So we have this little shape, this kind of shape like this. So let's put that shape on here. So we now know that this shape here is the deltoid, and the deltoid is designed like this. And the contour lines, always remember the contour lines. Now we have other shapes in here, and this is where anatomy comes in. This bump is the tricep. This bump over here is the bicep. Down here, this is the brachialis. But we don't have to know it that well. We can just go, there's a mass here, there's a mass right here, And then we see that it goes from thick to thin to thick. So we just follow that. So tricep goes from thick to thin, and it's fat and thick, but it stops. It doesn't go all the way down here to the bottom. It goes up here. And then we continue with this flat right here. Boom. Right? And then you can have your contour lines like this. We have the structure. So this forearm here, your ulna muscle goes from all the way down here, all the way up to here, where you see the bone. I'm skinny, so that's where that part is. So you can see it very clearly on me, and you should feel it on yourself too, no matter how much you weigh or anything, because in human anatomy, if you're human, you shouldn't have much muscle on this side anyway. You should still be able to feel it, because unless you're not human, you don't have any muscles there. This muscle here is the ridge muscles, your flexors, or your extensors, I mean, not flexors. There's a notch here. What that notch is to show the hinge, or just to show cool design. I don't know. You can choose to use it, you can choose not to use it, but I'm gonna put it in just for the study. And then you have your muscles like that. Boom, that's a study. It doesn't look good, right? This isn't something that you would, show off, but now I know a little bit more about the forearm. Let's do this one. We're gonna study this one. So same thing as before. Let's do a cylinder going down, right? Because we know the arm is a cylinder. We have this to work off of, sphere, and this will also get us the perspective that we want. Boom, hand, who cares? We're not looking at hands today. Now for this one, we see the bone, and then here the tricep is a little bit of a different shape, right? It's more exposed, and the tricep is a lot higher. This one here is a lot lower. It kind of pushed it up more, But that's just stylistic. You can see however it goes. You can just look and study it. So here in this case, let's do it this way. Instead of adding the bones first, let's put in, or instead of adding the muscles first, let's put in the elbow angle, just because it's more prominent. Boom, boom, and then we can have here going all the way here to the pin, to the epicondyle of the ulna, like this. Okay, so we have this structure. Now let's put the muscles around it. We have a notch here. We have a muscle here, and we just wrap it around like this, wrap it around like this. And then for the muscles, just know we have the ridge muscle, which is big mass here, and then it tapers down for the flexors. For the extensors, I mean, the flexors are back here, right? Yeah. Extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi ulnaris, extensor digitorum. All of these muscles are all like in here, they all stretch out like this, and then we have the flexi carpi ulnaris, flexor digitorum, flexor digiti minimi, all of that fun stuff. But you don't have to know all of that. It's helpful to know all of that. And all this, you don't really have to know. All you have to know is we simplify. Muscles are round forms, bones are rigid forms. Know the big muscle masses. Look at your reference, find, an artist you like. If you like this, you can screenshot it. And then just copy it and try to understand it. Let's look at the next one. Right here, there's different poses. It's focusing on this muscle, which is the ridge muscles, extensor carpi radialis longus. But we're not going to focus on that. We're going to focus on the elbow. So let's keep going with different poses. Here, let's do this one. So for this one here, we have an arm going out this way. We have a sphere for where the joint is. We have another cylinder going out this way. And then we have a sphere, and then it goes into the hand. Boom. Now this might take you more time than it takes me. It's just how well you have your proportions ready, and you don't have to be super perfect with it. You see, I just sketched it out just based on vibes. Now we have here, let's put in the angle of the elbow. So it's like this because it's bent. And then we have the triceps, we have the biceps, or we have the deltoid, and then we have the biceps, we have the brachialis. This is the form. And then we have the ridge muscles, which come out from the humerus bone, your upper arm bone, and then they wrap around all the way down to the thumb side of the hand. This is thumb side, this is finger side, and then you have this elbow bone, this ulna bone, going all the way down here, and then you have your flexor muscles down here. Boom, elbow. Same thing with here. So this is what I mean by like when you study, you find a book and you copy every single drawing. You go from here, copy, copy. You go from this drawing to this drawing to this drawing. You just copy almost mindlessly in a way. You just don't even have to think about like, oh, maybe I should do this one. Just do all of them. No questions. You're just doing it all. And if you have a book this thick, it'll take you, you know, like a month or two. And if you're doing a few pages every day. So go through and do that. And that's how basically you do that for a few years of drawing, and then you can draw whatever you want later on. So it's the same idea here. You have your elbows, you have it going, right? And then once you start, you know, seeing it better, you can just start focusing more on like gesture like that. Okay, well, let's, instead of starting with the elbow first, let's bring in deltoid first. And then we have biceps here, and then we have triceps going down here. And then we just need to make sure to have a nice corner for the elbow. Find the perspective of it, and then attach it here. And then we have muscle down here, muscle up here, main muscle, elbow, like this. Let's keep going. And here is just more closer focusing on the muscles, but I want to look more at these ones here. This is basically where you should be starting at. If you cannot visualize, if you cannot invent these, then don't do these. Get good at inventing these. Now, do you need to, you know, be a pro at them and do a million of them? Not really. You just need to be more comfortable with it and understand it better. Because the other trap of it is that you don't want to be stuck doing this for like weeks and never moving on to this. I say maybe you can spend a day doing this at max, and then you start moving on to this, and then you go back to this. You always go back and you redo stuff that you've done before. Say you've already, you know, drawn a bunch of these. Now go back and draw a bunch of these again, and then go back to here. Because by reviewing and relearning and practicing some of the things that you've figured out or studied before will help you improve it and help you learn it in a deeper way. So we have some of these. These are the building blocks. Have that in your head. And then when you want to start doing something like this, then it's just adding in, you know, more of the forms. Like we have the deltoid here, and then we have tricep here, this, and then it goes into the ulna, and then it goes into like this, like that, right? You just start building onto it. Now that should be elbow. Now let's look at knees. Knees are fun. Knees are annoying for me because I don't really like drawing knees, but we draw them anyway. So the main thing about knees is that we want to look at the bones. So if we look over here, we see the bones. The bones of the knee is very similar to the arm. So let's first look at the arm. The arm has the humerus bone like this, and it goes down. And it's kind of fat right here. And then it has a bone here. It has two bones, the radius and the ulna, like that. This one here would be the radius. This one here would be the ulna. The ulna, you will see the bone coming out, and it attaches to the pinky side. And then here is the thumb side. And here you have all the fingers. This is the arm. Now let's look at the leg. The leg is very similar. Human anatomy is like that. The leg will have the femur coming out like this. It's a big bone, it's a big boy. And it also goes fat. Now the way we want to simplify the femur is something like this. It's like a big hammerhead shark. Let's do a different angle. It'll be like this, right? This would be the big femur bone. And then you would have something similar to this, except they're not really like grabbing on. It's more like, you want to simplify it more like a platform, and it's like this. It's not the tibia. What is this? Is it the tibia? Yeah, this is the tibia bone. And then here you will have a smaller bone called the fibula. Two bones, just like the forearm. And then it goes into the ankle, blah, 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 the foot, right? But there's one more thing on the knee that's very important to remember, and that's the patella, which is the kneecap. And the patella is this little shape like this. You can think of it like a shield. This is front view, this is 3/4 view, side view would be like that. The patella is a bone, and it'll go right here, right over. And that is your kneecap that goes right on top. So this is the bone of your knee. The only things you need to know is just keeping in mind the patella and just keeping in mind that you have this sort of cylinder going into a tube here, and then you have this kind of box going down into a leg. That's it. That's the bone idea. Now let's see, how does it actually look? How does this sort of happen? Now you have a lot of muscles going around here, and I need to refresh my leg anatomy muscles because I kind of forgot. The only muscle that I really know that I like is the sartorius muscle, which is this muscle here, and then you have the adductor shapes, and then you have, oh man, it's like vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, I don't know which ones. Lateralis is probably the outside one, medialis is probably the inside one, rectus femoris, I think, something like that. But anyway, it's essentially the same idea that we had with the elbow. So if we have the elbow, it goes into a structure because we see the bone. This is the same way. All of these muscles wrap around like this. These are all muscles, and they all end around here. This is where the knee would be. This is where what this line is right here. This is the lower part of the leg. And I'm drawing essentially the patella, or not the patella, the tibia. And the tibia bone is like this. It goes down like this. And then you have the fibula. And then you have the foot, right? And then you have muscles and stuff around it, but I'm not focusing on that right now. We're gonna focus on the knee. I like putting a sphere here, a circle, so that we capture the space and we reserve that space. And then we kind of just bring in the shape of the patella as it's protruding out. And then you have, you know, a little bit of the shape from here. You have a little bit of this mass, this shape on the outside. And then you have, like, you know, you have muscles and stuff wrapping around too. So just round that out. And then brings into lower leg. If you know your gesture, you should know about the outside, inside, outside. So you should have that gesture down, and you should have, you know, just a little bit of anatomy, knowing that you want that zigzag pattern in your drawing. So that way you have bulge, 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 and then you have little tiny bulges or straights inside. But that's essentially the idea for the knee. Now the side view knee is the most interesting, and it's going to be the most prominent, because you have the same idea where you have cylinder for upper leg, sphere for the joint, and then cylinder for the lower leg. Your muscles are sticking out like this. You want to have a good gesture to them. And then you have your knee giving a little bit of structure. And then you have the bulge coming down from the back. Knees and legs, for me, so much of it is gesture. So if you know your outside, inside, outside gesture, so if you have a pelvis, outside thigh, inside of the knee, outside calf, connect it with straights, boom, you have your front view leg. If you're doing side view leg, right, this is the butt, front of thigh, connected with a straight, back of calf, connected with a straight, boom, you have your leg. I know the idea. There's going to be, what's it called? Fisheye, wide angle. There's going to be lens distortion on this, but I'm going to be putting a anti-lens distortion in post. So it might look a little bit weird when it's at the angle, but you get the idea. So you have outside, inside, outside, and then front to back. If you know these two gestures, then you're basically just adding a little bit of structure onto the gesture, and then you have your knee and you have your leg. So like front to back, you have a little bit of structure here just to help with the knee. Now let's go into a little bit more of a practical idea. And we have some ideas here. And I think I've drawn from this image a million times. I've drawn from this image a million times. These two images are really good for capturing it. So let's go into it. Let's say let's do this drawing because it's so straightforward. Same thing as the arm. We're gonna copy it. This is exactly how I study. It's just, you're just copying it. But the way you copy it is what's important. So once you get the habit of good copying, then you're good. So this is how I start, right? Cylinder for the limb, circle for the joint, cylinder for the leg, trying to capture the angles and the proportions. This might be hard for some people. You just need to keep practicing and keep doing this in order to get better. I don't even know if there's a way to get better at this. Like they're like, oh, what's the way to learn how to do this? You just need to do it a million times. That's it. Because this is the basic. Like you need to get this down before you can get this down. And the way to get this down, this is basically step 1. Now, how do you even start step 1? By doing step 0, which is I guess these. And then you just need to do this a lot of times. That's it. There's no like step negative. You just need to keep doing it. Now we have the bones in here like this. I'm not going to draw that because you're not going to see that in the end. So I'm just gonna focus on the knee. We know that there's a patella, and we know that for bones, bones are structured. Bones are squares. Bones are boxes. Bones are cubes. So for here, because the knee is a big bone that's sticking out, I'm going to add some structure to it, like that. Boom, now there's a straight corner right here. And then this brings it into the other point where I have another point where it's like some people, they like to go super, like super slimy and jelly with it. There's no structure. This is not good. You want to have a balance of structure and slime, structure and jelly. So let's bring in a little bit of jelly now. There's a ledge here. There's like a staircase space. And if you don't know why it's there, you don't have to worry about it. You can research why it's there if you want to, but in this case, we're just gonna copy it. So much of drawing too, especially when drawing from imagination, is just memorizing the shape. So like if you've drawn this a million times and this is like whatever, whenever you want to draw a person from imagination and put them in whatever angle, you just automatically have it in your muscle memory to just have this staircase shape there, right? So then it just ends up becoming muscle memory and you don't have to think about it, and then you get fast with it. Now what's interesting is that here, the tibia bone, just like the ulna, you know how like the ulna, elbow, all the way up the arm, this is all bone. There is no muscle around here. I mean, I don't have muscle in general, but you have your ridge bones up here. You have your ridge muscles and stuff here. But this bone is going all the way across subcutaneously, which means that it's right under the skin. It's the same thing with the tibia. Tibia bone is basically going right at the skin. That's why when you get kicked in the shins, it hurts because you're just basically kicking the bone. So yeah, boom, boom. And then you have your foot. I'm not going over feet. You can have your own way to draw feet, but that's essentially it. You just want to make sure you have the structure. Same thing with this one. Let's look at this one. You have your pelvis. I'm not going to go over pelvises, but you have your way to draw a pelvis. Cylinder in perspective, going down. Now let's add in a little bit more. So we can add in a little bit more structure to the knee. Now my perspective is a little bit different from this one, but that's fine because I'm just going to make my own version of it. So I have this structure for the knee. For this one, let's put in a little bit of structure for the knee. Get good at your boxes, get good at drawing boxes from all kinds of angles. Boom, you have a little bit of a bone here, or a little bit of a muscle, larger muscle, down, boom, like that. Here, I mean, this muscle is a little bit too big, but it's okay. Here, we can look at it like this, the calf muscle. It goes out like that. Here, boom, boom. What this bump is, this is the adductor muscles. It's like a bunch of, little muscle groups here. You just simplify it and call it the adductors. Same thing for here. The knees are super pronounced. Essentially, it's a cylinder that tapers into a square, into a cube. That's basically what the knee is. And then you have all of these cylinder muscles wrapping around it like this, right? You have a big cylinder going out like this. You can have your structure, and then you can have your big B block like this, and that's basically the idea for the knee. Now let's look at a bit more of a rendered vibe. So if after you've have this sort of way of building the knee set up, then how can you kind of stylize it in some ways? Well, a big part of like that learning is you have to find artists that you like and then figure out how they like to stylize things. So like this is how I like to sketch out the knee. I go upper leg, space for the knee, and then lower leg, and then this will give me chances to slowly start to like build out more and more of the anatomy. So if I'm looking at this leg here, we see that we have the like the rectus femoris. I don't know my quads muscles, but you have your quads, right? 4 muscles, and then you have your sartorius here, and then you have your adductor muscles, and then they go into the knee, and it's the same idea, except this time just the rectangle of the knee isn't going to be sticking out as much because it's standing up, but the idea is still the same. You just go here. It's still that one piece of rigidity and one piece of structure in here, and then you can start to slowly add in more muscles and round stuff around it. Bones are squares, bones are cubes, and muscles are blobs. That's how we want to simplify it. And then we have different diagrams like this. But it's essentially the same idea. When it's bent out, the knee kind of sticks out. When it's up, when it's straight, you have the muscles kind of wrapping around it, and it's a little bit tucked in. And honestly, like, I don't really know much more than that. That's literally where I'm sitting at right now. And I never really found a need, haha, get it? I never really found a need to learn more than that. Like, doing it, being able to do all of this from imagination, like, that's good enough. You know, you have a cylinder, and it's just the same thing. Don't overcomplicate it. It's just putting in gesture, putting in a little bit of structure, and then just putting in a little bit of anatomy. And that's all, like, all kinds of drawing is. So it's like, it's literally not that hard. People have all kinds of walks of life, but it's literally just, you just need to put in the work, man. Some contour lines so that we can see it, but it's just doing it. And no one really taught me how to do this too. Like, maybe some people learn better when someone, you know, teaches and explains things in words. That can be helpful, but you can also try. Like, if no one's here to explain anything, like how for me, like, no one explains anything to me, I just learn from books, or I just watch like old Proco videos who explains it. But I don't think, you know, he explains it that in depth half the time. Like, most of it is just me figuring it out. Like, the main thing is you just draw it a bunch of times. Like, you don't have to know what all of this is. Even Proco says it. Even, you know, a lot of people say it. It's just, you see this, you're like, cool, I don't know what any of that stuff means. I'm just gonna copy it. And I'm gonna copy this, and I'm gonna copy this. And then over time, through years, you'll be able to slowly be able to start to understand. Like, here, this bump, I don't really know what that is. I'm like, if you want me to name this muscle, I don't know. But it's just a bump there. And so when I draw it, right, all I draw is I just make sure that I have the knee here, like that. And then I just make sure that I have a little kind of muscle bump here. And then there you go. And if you ask me what this is, I don't know. I don't know what that is. But I just know that that's what I learned. And I know that that's what makes it look more realistic. And then that's what makes it look more structural, and that's it, you know? And then maybe, you know, when you're at a point later on, like a few months later, for me, I might be like, okay, I might look at something, I might do a study of, you know, like the calf bones or the soleolus muscle or whatever, and I'll look at, and then I'll just so happen to find a diagram where there's an arrow pointing to this bump right here, and it says like, oh, this is the blah 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 muscle, or the, you know, vastus medialis muscle or whatever, and I'm like, oh, now I know. And then I don't forget it, or maybe I will forget it, but that's okay because that's life. The other thing too, this is the last thing, is that depending on your style and depending on who you like to study from, I've seen a lot of artists, especially anime artists, they'll do something like this to block out the knee, and then the way they simplify it past this is to just do something like this, right? That's the simplification. And what these two kind of symbols are for the knee is basically the protrusion of the patella. And that's just about it. I think that we just need to do more practice. This is the explanation. Do a bunch of these. Find artists that you like. This is 1010. Look for 1010 on Twitter. He does good structural anatomy and structural figure drawing. You'll see more stuff here. I would do stuff like this first before you start doing stuff like this, but then don't get so stuck on this that you never do this. Do like a bunch of these and then do a bunch of these and then go back and do a bunch of these again. That's basically all the drawing there is. Always study fundamentals. Never forget your fundamentals. And yeah, that's forearms and that's legs and knees, I mean. Not form. That's elbows and that's knees.